ahead and send it over to Michelle.
Perfect. Thank you, Carrie. And also thank you to PWJP for helping us out today. Also, I want to welcome everybody to this is the pre-application webinar for the fiscal year 2017 Improving Criminal Justice Response to Sexual Assault, Domestic Violence, Dating Violence, and Stalking Grant Program. And the presenters today are going to be Sue Puglisi, Tia Johnson, and myself, Michelle John, and we are all OVW grant specialists with the ICJR program. First thing to know, hopefully you found us because you have already downloaded the application, but how to apply. First thing, there's a link under the justice.gov/OVW/how-apply. Be sure to use that. It has valuable tools such as links to the grant reference guide and resources for your application. And then obviously the ICJR link as well, which is found under justice.gov. Go to agencies, go to OVW, grant programs, and then open solicitation. Number one thing we want to talk about first and foremost is be sure to read the grant solicitation from beginning to end, whether you are a new or a continuing program. And I do apologize, we're going to repeat several things over this course. You may get sick of hearing it, but they're very basic things that oftentimes folks overlook. First of all, MOUs. We will discuss this in more detail later, but remember this is a critical piece of your project, and really your project should have started months, if not at the very least weeks before you actually downloaded the solicitation. And your MOU is your foundation for this project. So you want to make sure you have your partners, your purpose, the needs, and how you're going to structure this application really in the bag before you ever start in this particular process. So when it comes to addressing the purpose areas, you'll find that on pages 2 through 4 of the solicitation. Remember, there are 22 areas in the ICJR application that we will fund programs under. The majority of the areas are inherently governmental. When it comes to victim service providers applying as the lead applicant, they may seek funding only for the purpose areas of 5, 6, 10, 16, 17, 18, and 22. And then when it comes to victim service providers, applicants interested in addressing purpose areas 6, 10, 18, and 22, they must partner with the appropriate governmental agencies necessary for the effective implementation of this purpose area. So for example, if you're going to be looking at a court project, there must be a court associated with this particular application. We'll also go address the mandatory partners that are required with this with your application. There is a table found on page 15, and I believe it is Sue Puglisi who will go over that in greater detail. But again, that's very important and tends to be a sticking point for some applicants. And then in the end, remember, include only the purpose areas that you truly intend to address. There is no extra credit for listing additional purpose areas, especially if you just kind of mention it one line, never address it, it actually can work against you.
Hi, this is Sue Puglisi, and I'm going to go over the mandatory program requirements on pages 5 through 6 of the solicitation. OVW requires that all applicants develop an MOU with its project partners, as Michelle just stated. Under the government and court applicant section, if you are a state, a unit of local government, tribal government, or court applicant, you must enter into a formal collaboration with one or more nonprofit, non-governmental victim service provider or providers. The victim service provider must be able to serve victims of sexual assault, domestic violence, dating violence, and stalking. And you must also involve your victim service provider in the development and implementation of your project. If you fail to include the mandatory victim service partner or partners in your application will be removed from further consideration. If you're not sure who you are supposed to partner with, there is a chart available on page 15 of the solicitation. Slide 7 provides examples of what we mean by unit of local government. This information will be discussed further into the presentation, but we want to provide you with a definition for the purposes of the mandatory program partnership requirements section. As an example, if you're a police department, a sheriff's department, a district attorney's office, or a health department, and so forth and so on, you are not considered a unit of local government under the ICJR program. They are not the overall government. They are agencies that fall under the overall government. Examples of units of local governments are cities, townships, counties, and parishes, and et cetera. And for the full definition of units of local government, you will find this information on page 11 of the solicitation. If you submit an application without the proper unit of local government as the applicant, your application will be removed from further consideration. If you are a victim service provider, a state or tribal coalition, or a rape crisis center applicant, you must enter into a formal collaboration with a state, local government, or tribal government and any specific governmental organizations that are necessary to the implementation of your project. On page 6 of the solicitation under the victim service provider applicants, there is a link for Appendix E that references a list of mandatory partners. Please disregard this because it's an error. You'll find the list that you need on page 15 of the solicitation. You must involve these partners in the development and implementation of your project. If you fail to include the mandatory partners, your application will be removed from further consideration. If you're not sure who you're supposed to partner with, please see the chart on page 15 of the solicitation. OVW priority areas on page 6 of the solicitation. There are a number of OVW priority areas that applicants can address. You are not required to address any of the OVW priority areas, but we encourage you to. And those applications proposing activities in these priority areas will be given special consideration during the review process. Please do not confuse the priority areas with the purpose areas. You are required to address at least one of the purpose areas that are found on pages 2 through 4 of the solicitation. I want to highlight the OVW priority area integrate principles outlined in the recent Department of Justice guidance on identifying and preventing gender bias and the law enforcement response to sexual assault and domestic violence. OVW, in partnership with the Battered Women's Justice Project, held a roundtable on gender bias policing August 3rd through the 4th of 2016 here in Washington, D.C. Just to give you a little bit of background on this, national experts, technical assistance providers, law enforcement representatives, advocates, researchers, educators, and staff from other DOJ agencies were invited to participate in this discussion. There is a roundtable report that has been posted on the BWJP website, and we can provide that information for you if you don't already have it. And I encourage you to read this report in your spare time, especially if you're going to address that particular priority area. The report describes the roundtable, summarizes the themes that emerge, as well as areas in which opinions varied, and recommends next steps towards implementation of the guidelines. Statutory priority areas on page 7 of the solicitation. There are a number of statutory priority areas that are defined by legislation. Any of the statutory priority areas, but we encourage you to. And those applications proposing activities in these priority areas will be given priority during the recommendation special consideration during the review process. Please do not confuse the statutory priority areas with the OVW priority areas or the purpose areas. These are 3 different areas of focus. You are required to address at least one of the purpose areas, again, that are found on pages 2 through 4 of the solicitation.
Hello, this is Tia Johnson, and I'm going to discuss some of the activities that may compromise victim safety and recovery within your projects. Please be mindful that the activities that are listed on page 7 of the solicitation compromise victim safety. They can jeopardize victim safety, deter or prevent physical or emotional healing for victims, or allow offenders to escape responsibility for their actions. Few of the activities that may compromise victim safety are procedures or policies that exclude victims from receiving safe shelter advocacy services, counseling, and other assistance based on the actual perceived sex, age, immigration status, race, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, mental health condition, physical health condition, criminal record, work in the sex industry, or the age or sex of their children. Procedures or policies that compromise the confidentiality of information and privacy of persons receiving OVW funding or services. The use of pretrial diversion programs without prior OVW review and approval of program or automatic placement of offenders of such programs. Relying on batterer intervention programs that do not use court monitoring to hold batterers accountable for their behavior. Offering or ordering anger management programs for offenders as a substitute for batterers intervention programs. Policies or practices that discourage accepting cases when victims do not have physical evidence. Establishing or enhancing of a multidisciplinary collaboration community response without developing appropriate policies regarding confidentiality and information sharing for the members. Promoting nuisance abatement ordinances, crime-free housing ordinances, or a crime-free lease addenda. Please make sure that you follow these activities as well as policies or procedures that require testing of sexual assault, forensic evidence, in cases where the victim obtained a medical forensic exam but have not chosen to participate in the criminal justice system, or couples counseling, family counseling, or any other manner, or joint victim offender counseling as a routine or required response to sexual assault, domestic violence, dating violence, or stalking. Please be mindful. Again, there are 13 activities that compromise victim safety. Please look at each of them and be mindful that if any of these are listed or mentioned in your project or application, that it can affect your chances of being funded. Out-of-scope activities. Out-of-scope activities consist of activities that are unallowable within the ICJR program, such as research projects, direct legal representation, prevention activities, and family violence services. These can be found on pages 8 through 9 in the solicitation. There are 6 out-of-scope activities. Please make sure that you look and read over each of them to make sure that they do not show up within your project narrative in your application. If they do, this can affect your chances of being funded.
All right, it's Michelle again. So we'll go on to unallowable activities. Keep in mind these are specific to the ICJR program as well as other programs, but more specifically for us when it comes to this last one. We're looking at lobbying, fundraising, purchase of real estate or real property, physical modifications to buildings, including minor renovations such as painting or carpeting, construction, and this is where it gets specific to us in general, but we're looking at uniforms, weapons, automobiles, and security systems that require permanent installation. Those will all be unallowable activities included in your application. When it comes to the award information found on page 9 and 10 of the solicitation, keep in mind that we have availability of funds. All awards are subject to the availability of appropriated funds and any modifications or additional requirements that may be imposed by law. There is no guarantee that funds will be available in the future. Therefore, OVW encourages applicants to develop a plan to sustain project activities if federal funding through the ICJR program becomes no longer available. We're always reminding programs to look at self-reliance because we never know what funds will be for the future. So as you're writing this grant, think about how if, for example, if you are awarded at 37 months, how this will continue after the end of the 36-month award. When it comes to the award period, as I just mentioned, the grant award period is 36 months, and your budget when you submit it must reflect 36 months of project activity, and the total estimated funding on Block 15 of the SF 424 must also reflect 36 months. The award period will start on October 1st, 2017. Also, your award amount, applicants should carefully consider the resources needed to successfully implement the proposed project and present a realistic budget that accurately reflects project costs, and also remember the various partners associated with your application. When it comes to budget caps, the funding levels under the ICJR program for 2017 are as listed. Keep in mind your service area population will be the service area that your specific project is proposing. So if you're going to be a town or county-wide project, that will be the population. If you're a statewide or regional project, that will be the population that you're associating with this dollar amount. And same thing for reservations. So up to $500,000 will be $450,000 total. $501,000 to $900,000 will be $750,000, and over $900,000 in population will be $900,000 total. OVW has the discretion to award grants for greater or lesser amounts than requested and to negotiate the scope of work and budget with applicants prior to the award being granted. When it comes to type of applicants found on page 10, remember there are a few. We have new applicants. Those are the applicants that have never received funding under the ARREST program, which is our previous name, or have had previous funding that has expired more than 12 months ago. Also, we have continuation, applicants that have an existing or recently closed within the last 12 months award under the ARREST program and or ARREST award that has expired within the past 12 months. Entities that are no longer eligible due to the change in definition of local government, such as they were previously funded as a sheriff's department or a parish or a prosecuting attorney's office, for example, can only apply now through their unit of local government. Continuation funding is not guaranteed, so if you've been previously funded before, it's not a guarantee for funding happening in 2017. And finally, grant recipients who received new or continuation funding for 36 months in 2015 or 2016 are not eligible to apply. So if you're receiving funds from those years, you can go ahead and end phone call because we're not going to fund the program. The next section, eligibility, pages 10 and 12. Again, Sue mentioned this earlier, but we've got states, Indian tribal governments, state, local, tribal, and territorial courts, including juvenile courts, and units of local government. And again, remember, units of local government are not police departments, sheriff's departments, prosecuting attorney's offices, but are in fact town of, for example, or county of would be the way that those would apply. Also, victim service providers, including state, tribal, and territorial domestic violence and sexual assault coalitions, and rape crisis centers in states other than a territory. I'm sorry, governmental rape crisis centers in states other than a territory. And that's actually a repeat, so I apologize there. Also, going into non-eligible alone must apply through a unit of local government. Once again, police, pretrial service agencies, district or county attorney offices, sheriff's departments, probation officers, and universities. We're only saying this because we know that applications will come in and we'll have to deny some that will be specifically from a police department or a group of police departments or sheriff's departments, et cetera. So apologize for keep repeating it, but there's a reason for it.
Okay, nonprofit organization requirements. Any entity that is meeting the partnership requirement for the ICJR program based on its status as a nonprofit organization must be an organization that is described in Section 501c3 of the IRS Code of 1986 and is exempt from taxation under Section 501A of that code, and you can see the code there. Any nonprofit organization that holds money in offshore accounts for the purpose of avoiding paying the tax described in Section 511A of the IRS Code is not eligible for a grant from the ICJR program. Other program eligibility requirements, and you'll find this information on pages 13 through 16 of your solicitation. In addition to meeting the eligible entity requirements that Michelle just reviewed, applicants must certify that their laws or official policies meet the requirements according to 42 U.S.C. 3796HH1A1 in order to receive funding through the ICJR program. If you have certified in the past, you must certify again. All certification and other eligibility-related documents must be current, developed in accordance with the FY 2017 ICJR solicitation. All applications must include a certification by the Chief Executive Officer of the state, Indian tribal government, or local government entity that the requirements have been met or will be met by the end of the period ending on the date on which the next session of the state or Indian tribal legislature ends. For the FY 2016 ICJR solicitation, we had a number of victim service provider applications that were removed from further consideration due to the fact that they did not submit a certification of eligibility letter at the time of application, because they didn't see a sample certification letter in the appendix of the solicitation exclusively for victim service providers, and they thought this didn't apply to them. This applies to all applicants, and if you're a victim service provider applicant, you must obtain the certification of eligibility letter from your government partner as described in the FY 2017 ICJR solicitation, and you must submit it with your application. Your government partner will need to fill out the certification of eligibility letter on their department letterhead and provide you with the letter, and you will submit it with your application. This is if you are a victim service provider applicant. All applicants, this includes continuation, new, and you must submit a certification of eligibility letter at the time of application. Those applicants that do not meet all the program eligibility requirements at the time of application, you will not be considered for funding under the Improving Criminal Justice Responses Program. And you can refer to Appendix F on pages 61 through 63 of the solicitation for samples of a certification of eligibility letter. On pages 15 through 16 of the solicitation, we have provided you with a chart that shows a breakdown of the required partnerships and certifications depending upon if you're a court, a victim service provider, which includes state or tribal coalitions, or government rape crisis centers not in a territory, if you're a tribal government or a unit of local government. I want to highlight another issue that we ran into for the FY 2016 ICJR solicitation. If you are a police department and you are applying through your unit of local government, which you should be doing, please do not use police department letterhead and have your chief of police sign the letter. This is incorrect, and your application will not be considered for funding. The certification of eligibility letter must come from your unit of local government as described in the chart on pages 15 through 16. It must be on the unit of local government's letterhead and signed by the designated official signatories such as the county administrator, the mayor, the town administrator, board chairperson, and etc. The same applies if you're a prosecutor or a district attorney's office, and if you're applying through your unit of local government. And please note that OVW will not contact you if you have the incorrect certification letter or to make corrections on your certification letter. Other certifications on page 16 of the solicitation. A special condition will be added to all awards, new and continuation, to states and units of local governments to ensure compliance with the HIV testing certification. The special condition will prohibit the drawdown of 5% of the total award amount. So if you are continuation and you are awarded another grant, you have to certify again. Each time you received a OVW ICJR award, you have to certify each and every time. Applicants selected for awards will be required to submit an acceptable HIV certification letter along with a jurisdictional and or state statute for review at a later date by one of our OVW staff attorneys. This certification shall take the form of a letter on letterhead signed and dated by the authorizing official. It is not necessary to submit the HIV certification letter at the time of application, But if you are awarded an FY 2017 ICJR grant, you must submit your HIB certification letter by the period ending on the date which the next session of your state legislature ends. The next session of the state legislature means the next session after the date on which your application for your award was submitted. If you do not submit it by the date on which the next session of the state legislature ends, you are not considered to be in compliance with this provision, and you will forfeit the 5% withheld of funds. If you believe you are in compliance with the HIB special condition, it is your responsibility to remember when to submit the HIB certification letter. You don't want to submit it when your grant goes into closeout, and that's something that we will discuss at another time. The submission of a certification of eligibility letter does not constitute compliance with the HIB special condition requirement. We've had a number of applicants in the past who have submitted their certification of eligibility letter to satisfy the HIB special condition. These are two separate letters, so please do not confuse the two. Certifications and document notes. OBW will not contact you to make correction to the certification letters. OBW will not redirect documents that are inadvertently submitted with the wrong application. For instance, an ICJR letter submitted with a transitional housing program application will not be transferred to the ICJR application. Letters of registration on page 17 of the solicitation. OBW strongly encourages applicants to submit a letter of registration if intending to apply for FY 2017 ICJR program funding. The letter should state that the applying organization is registered and current with the SAM and grants.gov and submitted to OBW at the OBW mailbox, obw.icjr@usdoj.gov. Please register and submit this by January 26, 2017. This will ensure that you are well positioned to successfully submit a proposal by the application deadline. This letter will not obligate you to submit an application, and you can see Appendix B starting on page 52 for a sample letter of registration.
Okay, we will discuss the application contents. This is very important during your time of filling out the application. It is important for applicants to include the following mentioned documents, which are your project narrative, budget detail worksheet, and a budget narrative, memorandum of understanding, which is your MOU, and a certification of eligibility. Please be mindful, in rare circumstances that a court is prohibited from entering into an MOU, a letter of commitment may be submitted. Caution. We will discuss this further on slide 45, so please pay attention once we get there. Make sure that you demonstrate that all the requirements are met. If any missing or incomplete requirements are submitted, you may run the risk of not being considered for funding. Your summary data sheet. One of the 4 pages, it's 1 to 4 pages in length and may be single or double spaced. This does not count towards the 20 pages that you need to submit within your project narrative. And during the summary data sheet, you identify the project's focus, whether it being law enforcement, prosecution, courts, family justice center, trainings, special projects within the scope of the ICJR program. For continuation applicants, only statements as to whether the application is in compliance with the HIB requirements. Make sure that you see the HIB certification under letter C of eligibility information, which is in the beginning part of your solicitation, which you can be found on page 19 in depth of the solicitation. Please make sure that your summary sheet is it's separate from your project narrative. And it's important that you label your documents exactly how it is written with each document, how it's labeled within the solicitation. Summary data sheet, we'll continue to discuss that. applicants must address at least one statutory purpose area. Make sure that you do address at least one. If your program can only address one, that's fine. There's no contest of how many you can address. Please stay in the parameters of what your project can do. Do not be overzealous. If you're able to do more than one, that's great, but make sure that your project can sustain the statutory purpose area that you are addressing. Please stay within the numbers of the summary data sheet. So the summary data sheet is listed from number 1 through 11. And if there's something that you can't address, place the number and then write NA, not applicable at the time. Please keep the sheet uniform as it flows within the other applicants. Please be mindful that examples are also located at the back of the solicitation if you would like to see an example of the summary sheet. Your proposal abstract. Your proposal abstract should be no more than 2 pages. It may be single or double spaced. The proposal abstract provides a short and accurate summary of the proposed project. So you will include your partnerships, the primary activities, products to be produced, service areas of the proposed project, and the impact of the proposed project. You're going to just basically paraphrase what your project is doing and just sum it up within the pages of 2 or less, 1 or 2 pages. Your project narrative. This is very important because within your project narrative, it must be double-spaced, and it should not exceed 20 pages. Please do not cut yourself short and stick with the 20 pages and address the sections that need to be mentioned within your project narrative as your purpose of the application. You need to address why you are applying for the ICJR program grant and explain what this application would do for your program. Also talk about what will be done. What are your project goals and objectives, and what are the timelines describing the specific tasks and activities necessary for accomplishing the what will be done section, as well as who will implement your project. It is good for OVW to know what agencies, what offices, who is responsible for implementing the project. That if it's a certain law enforcement, if it's a prosecutor, if it's court, if it's a service provider, you need to write that down and explain in great detail within your application, within the project narrative. Again, please be mindful that this should be 20 pages. Your budget. Please make sure that you stay within your budget cap. In the beginning, Michelle mentioned regarding budget cap, so if you're able to ask for funding of $450,000, make sure you stay within that. If it's less or if it's more, make sure you stay with that and make sure that it meets the qualifications of the population that you have within your area. Make sure within your budget that you address everything that you have in your project narrative. If it's something that you left out and you place it in your budget, you have time to go back to put that in your project narrative before submitting it. But please be mindful that you still have to stay within the 20 pages. So make sure that everything that you have in the project narrative is within the budget and vice versa. Okay. Training and technical assistance. All applicants are required to allocate funds to support travel, costs associated with technical assistance, and capacity building activities sponsored by OVW designated technical assistance providers. Please be mindful that funding should be $10,000, no more, no less. Please remember, for those that are in Alaska, Hawaii, or in the United States territory, you are allowed $15,000. New or continuation grantees, you still have to put in $10,000.
All right, so back to memorandums of understanding. Remember, this is the foundation of your application, and it is required a component to make sure that this moves forward in the review process to have your application hopefully funded for future. When it comes to applications, Make sure that you're submitting an MOU that demonstrates that you have consulted and coordinated in a meaningful way with your partners, and that, if appropriate, you have project or population-specific organizations involved. Again, this is the foundation of your project, so make sure you have the right people involved in it. Previously funded applicants must develop a new MOU that reflects the continuation of the project activities and includes current dates and signatures from all relevant project partners. Also, the MOU must identify the partners and provide a brief history of the collaboration and relationship among the partners, when it began, and when each partner entered into the relationship. Clearly state the roles and responsibilities of each organization and agency they would assume to ensure success of the proposed project. As I mentioned earlier, include project-specific partners. So, for example, if your project is going to be working with the deaf community or Latina women, for example, that you're involving agencies that specifically work with those populations to make sure that you're going to be able to fully serve them in your direct services. Also describe the resources each partner would contribute to the project, either through time, in-kind contributions, or grant funds, things like office space, project staff, et cetera, and specify the extent of each partner's participation in developing the application. Also demonstrate a commitment on, MOU should demonstrate a commitment on the part of all project partners to work together to achieve the stated project goal. Indicate approval of the proposed project budget by all signing parties, and identify the representatives of the planning and development team who will be responsible for developing and implementing project activities, and describe how they will work together and with the project staff. And very important, remember, it must be on the letterhead of the governmental applicant or partner, so it's going to be on the state, unit of local government, et cetera, and must be signed by the designated official signatories, so a governor, mayor, county administrator, chief judge, principal judge, et cetera. Also, do not wait till the last second to get signatures for the MOU. We see this happen every year. People wait to the last minute. They're going crazy trying to get this all put into place, and at the end of the day, they're missing signatures, or they're not able to upload their application after working several hard-filled weeks on getting this put together. Also, do not submit it on blank paper. Make sure you have all your signature lines completed, and also, if you're mentioning 10 partners on the front, make sure there's 10 signatures on the back. Also, this one, and I'm going to say this only because we're required to, so please pay attention. I need everyone's attention. If you are currently in your office and you have begun to zone out, search the internet, are playing Words with Friends or Candy Crush, please, for this one moment, listen to the following. This is a rare circumstance, and we don't want this to bite anybody in the behind. First and foremost, we received guidance from our legal advisors that we had to include in the application additional information that can be found in the solicitation on pages 23 and 24. The letter of commitment will only apply in rare circumstances, so this is different than the MOU, and will likely not apply to anyone on this phone call, but we have to discuss it briefly. 1, if you are a court program, meaning you are either applying for ICJR funds as a court, for example, the 6th Judicial District of Smith County or Baskerville County Courts, or your project is a court-based project and you have a court as a partner on your application, then the following pertains to you and only you. First, if as a court you are prohibited, keyword here, from entering into an MOU, you may submit a letter of commitment. Your partners may also do the same. Secondly, if you are not the lead applicant and if you are not a lead applicant and are a court in partnership on the project, the court may submit a letter of commitment, but all other partners and lead applicant, all other partners and the lead applicant must submit an MOU. Period. No other options. I'm going to say it one more time. If you are not a court and you are not partnered with a court as part of your project, this does not apply to you. Please do not make us remove your application, the application you and your team have worked hours and hours upon during the basic minimum requirement phase of the grant review process by submitting a letter of commitment when you should have submitted a memo of understanding. If you're unsure at any point in time, please reach out to us via email or telephone call for clarification. But again, this will only be in a very rare circumstance will a letter of commitment be applicable.
For this part of the webinar, I'm going to briefly go over some additional information that's required as part of the application. This information will not be scored during our review process, but you are required to submit this information. The proof of 501c3 status form is for nonprofit organizations only. It will need to be submitted with your application. As noted under eligible entities, an entity that is eligible for the Improving Criminal Justice Responses Program grant funds based on its status as a nonprofit organization must be an organization that is described in Section 501c3 of the IRS Code of 1986 and is exempt from taxation under Section 501A of the Code. All such applicants are required to submit a determination letter from the IRS recognizing their tax-exempt status. OVW will be unable to make an award to any nonprofit organization that does not submit a 501c3 determination letter from the IRS. Disclosures related to executive compensation. An applicant that is a nonprofit organization may be required to make certain disclosures relating to the processes it uses to determine the compensation of its officers, directors, trustees, and key employees. A nonprofit organization that states on a summary data sheet that it uses a safe harbor procedure must then disclose in an attachment to its application, and please title it Disclosure Process Related to Executive Compensation, the process used by the applicant nonprofit organization to determine the compensation of its officers, directors, trustees, and key employees, together quote-unquote covered persons. For additional information on what pertinent details are required, please see pages 25 through 26 of the solicitation. The confidentiality notice form. All applicants are required to acknowledge that they have received notice that grantees and sub-grantees must comply with the confidentiality and privacy requirements of the Violence Against Women Act as amended. Applicants must submit the acknowledgement form, which is available on the OVW website, and you can see it there in the PowerPoint presentation. There's the website there. This form must be signed by the authorized representative and uploaded with the application on grants.gov. The application for federal assistance, or the SF-424. Standard assurances and certifications regarding lobbying, debarment, suspension, and other responsibility matters, and drug-free workplace requirements, Form 4061/6. Under this section, applicants must complete the SF-424 online. You can find this form on the OVW website, and there's the link for it. No, the link for it is not in this presentation, but we can get you that information. If you actually go to the OVW website, there is a link for the SF-424. For the type of applicant, please do not select other. I repeat, please do not select other. Please pay careful attention to the amount of federal funding requested in the estimated funding section of this form. This amount must match the amount of federal funding requested in the budget section of your application package. The individual who is listed in the authorized representative section must be the individual who has the authority to apply for and accept grants on behalf of the organization or jurisdiction. If you do not have this authority, please do not place your name in that box on the form. For the standard assurances and certifications regarding lobbying, debarment, suspension, and other responsibility matters, and drug-free workplace requirements, Form 4061/6, please be sure to carefully review the assurances and certification forms online. You will receive a request to compile these forms online during the application submission process. All applicants must complete the disclosure of lobbying activities form, the SFLLL form. Applicants that expend any funds for lobbying activities must provide the detailed information requested on the form. Applicants that do not expend any funds for lobbying activities should enter NA in the required highlighted fields. Here's additional required information, letter of non-supplanting, financial accounting practices, and indirect cost rate agreement only if it applies to you. The letter of non-supplanting. Applicants must submit a letter to OVW's director signed by the authorized representative certifying that federal funds will not be used to supplant state or local funds should a grant award be made. And for a sample letter, you'll find a link on page 26 of the solicitation. Financial accounting practices. Each applicant must prepare a response to the questions that are provided under this section on page 26 of the solicitation. Please be sure to provide complete responses that address all questions included for each numbered item. OVW will review the applicant's responses to assist in evaluating the adequacy of the organization's financial management system and to identify any areas of need for training and technical assistance. This section of your application should be no more than 2 pages and should be a separate attachment to the online application in grants.gov. The indirect cost rate. If you intend to charge indirect costs through the use of an indirect cost rate, you must have a federally approved indirect cost rate agreement. Please include a copy of a current signed federally approved indirect cost rate agreement. There should be a separate attachment to the application in grants.gov. Organizations that wish to negotiate an indirect cost rate may contact OVW's Grant Financial Management Division at the email that is listed here in the presentation, or you can call 1-888-514-8556 for additional information. Registration. There are application registration requirements listed on page 28 of the solicitation. Each applicant must obtain a Data Universal Numbering System, or DUNS, be registered in the System for Award Management, or SAM, and submit the application online via grants.gov. Please register immediately, but no later than January 26, 2017. Do not wait till the last minute to register because you will more than likely run into technical difficulties. It takes a while for you to obtain these numbers. Applicants should ensure that the DUNS number for the application is for an organization that is eligible to apply for the grant program. And I believe Michelle had gone over the eligibility requirements early on in the presentation. Only the organization that is registered in SAM may use that DUNS number and grants.gov registration to submit an application. Applicants for all federal grants are required to register with the System for Award Management, or SAM. If the apply organization already has an employer identification number, or an EIN, the SAM registration will take up to 2 weeks to process. If the apply organization does not have an EIN or employer identification number, then the applicant should allow 2 to 5 weeks for obtaining the information from IRS when requesting the EIN via phone, fax, mail, or internet. Please follow the steps on page 28 of the solicitation to obtain complete details on registering in the SAM. Submission dates and times. All applications will be submitted electronically in grants.gov. The deadline for submitting applications in response to this solicitation, and this is very important, is 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on February 16, 2017. Applications submitted after 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on February 16, 2017 will not be considered for funding. So for those of you that are out there on the West Coast, Mountain Time and so forth, please understand that it is Eastern Time, not your time. If you experience difficulties submitting an application, please refer to the Experiencing Technical Difficulties During Submission section in the chart that's located on page 30 of the solicitation. It's very important that all applicants read this section in the solicitation carefully. Applicants should anticipate that failure to meet all registration and submission deadlines will result in their application being removed from consideration. It is your responsibility as the applicant to ensure that the application is submitted by the deadline. To ensure a successful application submission, OVW strongly encourages applicants to submit their applications at least 48 but no less than 24 hours before the deadline. Again, at least 48 but no less than 24 hours before the deadline. If you wait to the last minute, I can guarantee you more than likely you'll run into some type of technical difficulty. This happens every year, so just make sure you allow yourself plenty of time to submit your application before the deadline. After you submit your application, the authorized organization representative, or the AOR, should closely monitor their email for any notification from grants.gov about a possible failed submission. The authorized organization representative is a user role within grants.gov for a user that is authorized to submit applications on behalf of the organization. We run into a lot of complaints where an application is submitted and then whoever submits the application will log off or walk away from the computer or leave for the day, and they miss crucial emails that might be forwarded to you concerning errors and so forth from grants.gov. So just make sure that you kind of stick around for a bit and check for any emails that you might receive from grants.gov for any errors and so forth. The authorized organization representative will receive a minimum of 2 emails from grants.gov. One will confirm receipt of the application package, and the other will either notify the authorized organization representative that the application was successfully submitted, or it will notify the authorized organization representative that there was an error with the application submission. That's why it's very important that you kind of stick around after you submit your application to see if you receive these emails. Please do not wait until the day of the application deadline to begin the application submission process. Every year we have applicants that wait until the last minute to submit their application, and they always run into a technical difficulty. Grants.gov notification process is automatic. OVW does not send out these notifications, nor does OVW receive a copy of these notifications. It is the responsibility of the applicant to notify OVW of any problems with the application submission process. Please follow the instructions as noted on page 30 of the solicitation. OVW offers several options for an applicant to provide advance notice to OVW if receipt of its application will be delayed due to a temporary lack of internet access or other technical difficulties or geographic isolation. Please follow the steps that are outlined on page 30 of the solicitation. An applicant's request to submit an application after the deadline will be considered by OVW if all the steps below are followed. Only in rare circumstances are extensions granted. If you do not follow the steps, we will not even consider your application. So please make sure you follow the steps that are outlined in the solicitation.
Intergovernmental review. Under the Executive Order 12372, requires applicants from state and local units of government or other organizations providing services within a state to submit a copy of their application to the link that is provided within the solicitation on page 31. If one exists and if their state has been selected for the program for review, make sure that you contact your state point of contact to determine whether the program has been selected for state review. Again, please make sure that you go to the links that have been provided within the solicitation on page 31 to find out if your state is part of the review. Food, beverage, costs for refreshment, meals, and conference planning. Please be mindful that OVW does not supply food or beverages for meetings, conferences, trainings, and any other events. Only under certain circumstances you are allowed and you have to show proof of these circumstances to OVW during the planning stages of the conference. For example, if the location of the event is not in close proximity to a food establishment, it's priority to try to secure a space that is near reasonable price and accessible commercial food establishments to make sure that you're able to bypass this part of the food and beverage cost refreshments piece. This is just an example that I gave, and you can find more information found on page 32 of the solicitation. Also, when scheduling and putting on a conference, make sure you follow the specific restrictions on conference planning. That can be found on page 32 as well, and that shows in detail the expenditure limitations. Grants.gov. Make sure you look at the special character key that is found on page 34 of the solicitation that provides the character table of how you can enter in your grants.gov once you obtain your DUNS number and register with the SAM. You can begin the grants.gov registration process once you do that. It is imperative that you read through this solicitation, especially on page 34 when you're creating your grants.gov DUNS and SAM number. Now, tips for successful applications. Again, and we stress, please read the solicitation to its entirety before applying. I hope that during this time that you were able to take notes as well as jot down information as you were going through the solicitation and as well through this presentation. Follow the solicitation. Provide relevant detailed information about the proposed project. The information presented in the application will be the only information used to review, score your application during OVW's peer review process. Use all available assistance in the process. For example, you're able to contact the OVW staff at ovw.icjr@usdoj.gov, as well as the TA providers, which is BWJP, and etc. Pay close attention to the solicitation, keeping in mind application, registration, and submission dates. It is very important that you submit on time. If for some reason you're running into some crunch times, whether it being weather or a disaster, please make sure you're in contact with OVW at all times. Do not wait until the last day to upload your application. Grant managers do not work 24/7, so if you experience a problem after normal working hours, it could mean all of your hard work was for nothing. Please be mindful that OVW does work on the East Coast time, so please make sure if you're on the West Coast or if you're in the central part of the nation that you have to keep in mind that we are on Eastern Standard Time. Ensure that each section is completely addressed, even if it feels redundant. I know we said a lot of things within this presentation that was redundant, but it's very important that you continue to follow through the whole time when you're working up your summary data sheet, your project narrative, and so forth. Number all pages within your application. Limit the uses of acronyms included in the application. Make sure as you attach various documents for uploading, they are in final version and contain the corresponding document. That means if you're uploading a budget, label it as budget. If you're uploading the budget summary, label it as your budget summary. Label it as your project narrative, and so forth. It's easier for OVW, for the peer reviewers, that we know exactly what each document is labeled throughout. Upload each attachment and provide a simple, clear, and concise title, just as what I mentioned. And there's some examples listed here at the bottom. The Office on Violence Against Women contact information is provided on this slide. The solicitation point of contact is our very own Michelle John, and she can be reached at the email address that is provided, as well as the telephone number and the address of OVW. Please make sure that when you are sending these emails, phone calls, that you're doing it within the time frame of the solicitation. We cannot do anything once the solicitation is closed, and OVW will not contact you after that.
All right, and finally, just a couple last things here. Obviously, we've gone just slightly over the hour. We do apologize for that. For those who want to stay on, we're going to go over some of the questions on here briefly. Some of them, keep in mind, we'll need to have our legal advisor review them. For those of you that don't want to stay for that portion, you're welcome to go. But before I do that, I want to thank you for participating. I want to wish you luck, or we actually want to wish you luck in your application process, and hopefully we're able to fund your project. And we also want to thank Carrie and BWJP again for your support in all of this. And when it comes to questions, and I may ask some folks to actually verbally kind of give us some more information, but the first one we want to address is Lauren had a question about is the requirement that the MOU be produced on letterhead a new requirement? No, that's not the case. We've always required it to be on letterhead. When it comes to Lee, we've got, did you say a victim service organization submitting an organization as the primary applicant must provide an MOU on the city government letterhead? So yes, so if you are a victim service provider and you are partnered with, say, for example, the town of Jackson, then... No, they're the primary applicant. Oh, hold on one second. Primary applicant. Right, they're going to have the town as their... Oh, MOU. So the, I'm sorry, so the MOU can be on the nonprofit's right, the victim service letterhead. It's only the letter of certification that requires the governmental agency to have that information on letterhead. Let's see here. The next question goes to Martin Shabinsky. Well, if a district attorney's office is the implementing agency for this application, should the local unit of government or the DA be referenced as the contact in grants.gov? Keep in mind that the district attorney may be the one implementing the project, but it will be either the county or the town from which the DA's office sits under that umbrella that will be the applicant agency, and they will be the one that would be the point of contact under grants.gov. So again, if it's the county of Smithville or the town of Jones, that's who's going to be the point of contact for grants.gov. Let's see here. Lydia, when it comes to how long this presentation is over, will the recording be on the statewide website? We were projecting 123, but in reality, based on a couple of things that have occurred, it will probably be closer in the week to about the 27th of January. So keep in mind, you can start looking for it on the 23rd with the URL link that Carrie provided, excuse me. But it may be several days after that, and we'll try and also send out a notice to folks that it's posted. And it will run through the solicitation.
Gail Krieger.
All right, so the next one is Gail Krieger. The application requires a submission of a map in the service area. No, this does not count towards the 20 pages and would be a separate attachment. And then be sure to label it as service area map. Keep it simple. Let's see here. David Olson, if not a court applicant, is it okay to submit a letter of commitment or support from a non-funded, non-required partner? David, hold on to that thought. I may actually want you to unmute your phone and ask that question because there's some other pieces we need to know about that before we can answer it. Sarah Johnson, do you want every page in application numbered sequential or each attachment numbered within that doc? So numbered within the document. So if you're turning in the budget, you're going to number the budget 1 through 7 pages, for example. When it comes to your project narrative, if it's 20 pages, you're going to have 1 through 20 on that. So each section that's required will have its numbering sequentially within that particular component. And then, Crystal, hold on one second. We're going to look at marginalized communities for you. Anita, for a unit of local government lead applicant with a nonprofit partner, do we submit our 501 partners as key? Hold on one second here. My glasses are giving me grief. So yes, if you are the nonprofit and you are the lead applicant, then a 501c3 submission needs to be sent in. If you're a partner with a governmental agency, then that is not the case. The partnering 501c3 does not need to include it. Jenna Wilcox, can the AOR and the grant contact be the same person?
The POC.
Yes, they can. That was Jenna's. Then Christina, if the nonprofit is the key partner implementing the project, but the county is the applicant, can the MOU be on the nonprofit's letterhead, or must it be on the applicant?
No, it has to be on the
It's going to be on the applicant. So if the applicant is the county, it would be on the county's letterhead. All right, so email question from Carrie. Does the MOU have to be on government's letterhead if a nonprofit is the applicant? We are a nonprofit applying on behalf of the project. Is any letterhead required? Does the MOU? Yeah, so it's a nonprofit's letterhead. Just for the MOU. So we're good there. So David, if you are on the phone, are you able to unmute your phone and ask this question with a little bit more detail?
Or he can follow up through the email.
And
Dave,
looks like he's listening through his computer.
Okay. So, Dave, if you're unable, since you're unable to unmute your phone because you're listening through a computer, if you can please send your question to the obw.icjr@usdoj.gov mailbox, and we'll make sure to follow up with you, and that way we can get in contact with you as best as we can. So, Crystal, you have a question. To what extent can the funds be used for immigration support? Yes. It can be used under U visas, and we have a certain purpose area that focuses on that. So if you look back in the beginning part of the solicitation, they read our purpose areas, and you can use that for that part of the immigration piece. Pam, if we are applying for funding for a family justice center that is currently funded with an arrest grant, but we are changing the lead agency from the government unit to a nonprofit agency, do we apply as a new continuing project? This will be a new project. And then please make sure that there is no duplication of efforts of the project. So if you're applying, you're doing a different type of project within it. So please make sure that you're paying attention of what they apply for, that is no duplications. Also make sure you have the capacity to make sure that you can carry out the area of focus that you're trying to implement.
I think we've answered all the...
Okay. Lydia, when will the audio be posted to the website given above? We've answered this question. We said that it's supposed to post on January 23rd, but with some minor issues that it might be posted no later than the 27th of January. So you can check on the 23rd. But we do ask you to continue to keep checking the link that is provided within the solicitation through the 23rd and the 27th, and we're trying to get it up to you as soon as possible.
And remember as well, if you have a question, please don't hesitate to send it in, and we can respond back to you. Oftentimes, if we've covered it or if it's in the solicitation, we're going to send the information back to you, citing the page and the area. Right, and as well as you can call the main DOJ number for our office, and they can route you to us as well.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Oh, and Crystal, as far as marginalized communities, we can definitely get some additional guidance on, but you're going to look at populations that are underserved. So, maybe based on location, could be based on ethnicity, a particular like immigration or immigrant population, for example. It really is, pretty broad. So you would just need to make sure that you're painting a picture of who you are seeing as the marginalized community, how it's going to be supported, and then also make sure that you have partners that will be able to support appropriately that marginalized community. If you need additional guidance, then by all means reach out via email or telephone. Right. So again, Pat, we discussed this earlier, but just so you know, your question about the signatory, who the official person is when your state has particular guidelines as to who can sign, we're going to forward that question on to our legal advisor, and then we'll be able to post that back. So we will address it. And then also Katie Coppin, when it comes to your 3 projects, we just want to make sure what you're discussing is that you're going to have, I would assume you're going to have one application that maybe has 3 purpose areas or 3 focuses. So maybe some's going to deal with court, someone's going to deal with law enforcement, and part will deal with maybe prosecutors. It's one project with 3 focus areas. Again, that's where you're going to spell out your purpose areas. You're going to just find your partners that will deal with this.
Yeah, you just might be addressing different purpose or priority areas, but it's all considered one project. So you would have just one MOU with whomever you need to implement your project, or the 3 different purpose or priority areas that you're addressing, but it's still considered one project with only one MOU.
All right, so I think that's everybody's questions for today. Again, we have a few to follow up on. Otherwise, we definitely appreciate your time and patience with this process. Again, we wish you the best of luck in your application, and we'll do our best to answer your question in a timely fashion. And you have a wonderful day, and thank you for your call.
Thanks so much. Bye, everybody.